Welcome to PreciousMetalsInvesting.com. My name is Ted Sudol, and I have the pleasure of having as my guest today Paul Majenovic. Paul is the author of Precious Metals Investing for Dummies. He also has his own website, TheRavenCapitalist.com. Welcome, Paul.
Good to be back on. Now, you know what? Sometimes people are concerned about some vehicles that are out there, and I love to talk, we get a chance, about not only commodities, but a way of doing them with ETFs. Okay, first of all, what is an ETF? Okay, exchange traded fund. And basically, if I could just put down the essential point about an exchange traded fund. First of all, I love exchange traded funds. An exchange traded fund is really classified much like a mutual fund. We all know mutual funds, right? You put money into an investment manager, and they manage a mutual fund, which means they'll buy a portfolio of securities that are there to reach a particular objective, whether it's growth or income or some other, maybe a dual objective, whatever. And and exchange traded funds take much like a portfolio approach, but what it is basically a fixed portfolio. Where possible. Like for example, you might have a commodities ETF. For example, that might be, say, maybe it's a water ETF, right? Because I think water is a great commodity. I mean, you can't get more human need than that. And there are ETFs out there with water where they might have the top 35 or 40 water companies, and it's a way to actually diversify away from single company risk. Right, because sometimes when you invest in a single company, there's some risk involved there. I mean, like people in this world, you show them a winning industry, they'll find that losing stock.
Certainly.
Right.
Yeah. For instance, right now, oil is a good bet, except if you bet on a company in Venezuela.
Oh, there you go. Exactly right. In other words, there's different risks that can attach to a single company, whereas with an ETF, you're basically investing in the entire sector, or a huge swath of companies representing that industry or sector. And keep in mind the difference, because all a sector is a group of interrelated industry. Like we hear about the energy sector, and inside there you have oil companies, you have drilling firms, etc., and so forth. Okay, so with commodities ETF, it's probably a great way to invest in a whole swath of companies that are attached to a particular venue. Like there are, for example, some of my favorites out there in food and beverage, for instance. And I like that one very much. And so for people who want to be able to play something like the commodities sector or some other sector, I like ETFs very much, because part of where the differentiation is between that and mutual fund is an ETF. You could buy like a share of stock. You could buy one share of an ETF, or 100 or 1,000, and you could buy it in your stock brokerage account. And you could do things such as place trailing stops on them or limit orders. Many of them have commodities attached to them. So there's a lot of flexibility, and I like ETFs very much. It's a great way to diversify a portfolio almost instantly with a few mouse clicks. So I have very high regards with this. I think the area of concern you have to be careful about with ETFs is, look, an ETF is only as good as what it individually invests in, just like a mutual fund. Mutual funds out there, you're not investing in a mutual fund. It's a conduit of investment. In other words, you're investing in a portfolio of securities based on what that money manager is buying. A mutual fund is a constantly shifting portfolio, and the thing is, money managers today are like investors today. They're not as focused long term. They jump in and jump out as well. So there's that potential. Whereas with an ETF, since it's basically a fixed basket of portfolio, and the only times it changes is, if there's a merger, or some other change, but otherwise it's pretty much fixed in its structure. And I like it because, look, if I want to make a bet on it, I can buy, say, 100 shares. If it goes down and I like it, I'll buy some more. If it goes up, fine. I might put a stop loss, whatever. In other words, I love the features that you can do that you can treat it like a stock and do it in your portfolio and have greater control and know exactly what you're investing in. So the downside is, what if the securities that they're investing in is a problem? Like, for example, there is an ETF out there in silver. Since, we know we're in silver. It's the most famous ETF out there, and I don't even want to mention it, but the thing is that this particular one, they do lots of things, behind the scenes that are causing question marks to come up by my silver analysts. Sometimes they're going into liabilities, lending or leasing out silver, etc. And these kind of activities could do some harm. In other words, you might be in a situation where the price rise of the asset that you're attached to, you want that silver ETF going up with it. But because sometimes some of them are doing hedging or other activities where they're basically tied to almost gain or loss if it goes up, which would be an amazing thing. You know what I mean? This is where you have to analyze it. So you have to make sure that, like, if it's a silver ETF or a water ETF, you know exactly what they're into, and that they make it very transparent about what they're in. Otherwise, you might lose when you think that particular underlying asset should have been rising along with the market.
Right, that's a very important point, Paul. You not only have to think about the sector, but you have to think about the specifics of the ETF and their investment strategy. We've talked about precious metals being a great sector to be in. Well, you just can't give a blanket endorsement to every precious metals ETF, every silver ETF.
Yeah,
You have to use your judgment.
We'll talk more about a variety of these vehicles as well, like mining stocks and whatever, in due course. So stay tuned to Ted's channel here.
Thank you very much for being with us today here at preciousmetalsinvesting.org. I'm sorry.
.com.
PreciousMetalsInvesting.com. We used to be .org, but we made the change to the .com extension. And my guest has been Paul Majenovic. Paul is the author of Precious Metals Investing for Dummies.
And keep those questions coming in, even if you are from Bratislava. See you next time.
Thanks a lot.